Fred here, welcome back to the Gear Obsession channel. In this episode, which is a new sort of electronics portion of my channel, or IT, which stands for Information Technology, I will be installing some RAM. What you see here behind me is a ITX computer. And ITX is just a format or style of computer, which is essentially a very compact computer. So working on these things is very tight. Everything is close in. This is the case with the cover off, and I had already put in the motherboard, which you see down here, and you can see the processor under this fan right here. So all that's already in. That's the hard part. It's really very hard to try to do this with a camera. And you know, it takes a lot of patience to get everything weeded in. So anyway, I've had this running, and now I took it all back apart, and one of the things I realized I need to put more RAM in it, because originally I was going to put Windows XP, but now I'm adding, or I sort of bumped it up to Windows 7, so I need a little more RAM. And I'm going to say a million times, I'm sorry. With Windows XP you have a maximum amount of addressable RAM of like 3.2 gigs. You can't, if you put in 4 gigs into a Windows XP machine, it's only going to see 3.2. And essentially, if you have any 32-bit operating system, your maximum amount that it can access is 4 gigs. So if you stick 8 gigs into a machine running Windows XP, it's useless. Same thing with Vista. If you use Vista 32, it's only going to see 4 gigs, so it's not worth putting any more in there. Now if you have a 64-bit, I believe it's like 192 gigs is what Windows 7 64-bit can't handle, and that's what I put on here. I have Windows 7 64. Anyway, I only put 2 gigs in on one stick here, and I'm going to add another one. This is a matched set. This is exactly the same as the other stick I put in. Some rules to stick by when trying to figure out what kind of RAM to put in your machine is to go to the manufacturer of your computer's website and look up what RAM is compatible in your machine. Now, if you have a slot open and there's some RAM in there, the best thing to do is to match up exactly the same RAM that's in there. It's good to have everything the same speed, same make. Usually you come out the best. Another thing to consider is the speed of the processor. You know, if you have the communications, what's referred to as the FSB or front side bus between the processor and the chipset at a certain speed, and you buy slower RAM even though the motherboard can support it, you can get a bottleneck when it comes to trying to access the RAM. So in the case when I built this, I did everything on a 1066 speed based on that front side bus. So I had front side bus speed from the chipset of the motherboard to the processor of 1066, and I bought 1066 RAM, which is the maximum supported by this motherboard, even though you can overclock even further, but I don't mess with overclocking because I want to build a stable system. I'm not a big gamer, so I'm not trying to squeeze out every ounce of performance. Anyway, doing a lot of this and not enough of working on this machine. So I'm going to bring you in closer and we'll install some RAM, and I'm also going to install a fan after that real quick. So hang in and I'll be right back. Okay, so you can really see how crammed everything is in here, but you see that blue strip right there? That's the empty slot to put some RAM in, and this one already has a stick. I'm using the, I'm a big fan of the Kingston stuff. I don't get any of the super duper, you know, with the heat sinks and all that good stuff on there because I'm not overclocking. But just some Kingston, and again, this is 1066, or sometimes referred to as, let me see, this is PC3 8500 24, or I'm sorry, 240 pin. Again, it's important to go to the manufacturer of the motherboard, or if you have a system already built, if you bought a full system, go to the manufacturer like HP and find out what RAM your computer uses. So I'm going to open this up and I'll be right back. Now, back in the early days of computers, they always said, you know, wear electrical static discharge strap and have it buttoned down and ground the case and all that good stuff. I'll tell you, I never went through all that, even though you're supposed to, but I have never ruined RAM by just doing this. Make sure you totally unplug the motherboard, the computer, take everything out. Anything that could possibly feed electricity to that motherboard, make sure it is disconnected. And then I sort of try to touch the case and everything, and the reason why I'm doing that is so my voltage is even with, so I don't have any static. I'm sort of neutral with the case, so I won't have any voltage jumping between me and my hand. So I know I'm neutral with the machine. I shouldn't have any problems with static. Now when you pick up the RAM, try to touch the contacts and everything as little as possible, even though it's probably okay. Now you can see that there's a key right there, and you want to make sure that you have this turned the right way because it is off center on this particular version of RAM. So this is very tight. These ITX cases are crazy tight. Now what you do is you pull these little pieces out like that, and the key is toward this side, so I have the key toward that side. I'm sort of going to try to feed it in. Now this is I wish I could get you a better view, but this is the best I could do. I'm going to sort of get this fed in here, and take your time. You should find the slot that it feeds down into and carefully lower it into the socket. I'm probably going to get my head in the way. But, alright. So now I have to clip it, press it down and clip it in. Now, usually it says to just press straight down until those clips just sort of pop in on the RAM. It happens automatically. I don't like putting that much pressure down on the motherboard. So what I usually do is sort of clip it on one side and put my finger sort of here and press down and get one side clipped, and then sort of press down on this other side and try to get it clipped. So I'd sort of do one side at a time like that, and then I sort of jingle the middle a little bit just to make sure it's not, the motherboard didn't bow down a little bit. You want to make sure that socket, because that socket can flex or bend a little bit. So I just give it a little, very slight press and wiggle so I know it's in there good. And the clips are totally up. Sorry I'm losing my voice. So everything looks good. I'm going to take a visual. And that's really all you have to do to get RAM into your machine. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a fan to this machine. Now I had stuck this fan in here. I'm not going to show the name, but it was too noisy. It was probably about 30 decibels. I want to keep this machine as quiet as possible. So I found this fan that's only 14 decibels. So I'll go ahead and put this in right after this break. Now when hooking up a fan, you usually have two options. You could either take the end of the plug and attach this little jumper or extender, which is a standard power supply connector, and you could use one of the leads off the power supply to plug this into. But if your motherboard has a connector, which this one does for another fan, you're going to use this type of connector. And if you see 3 wires, that's going to give you an added benefit, because what that's going to do is it's going to give the speed of the fan's information to the motherboard, so the motherboard knows what speed the fan is, and it can also ramp it up and ramp it down. It can change the speed of the fan if needed. If it starts getting too hot, it can ramp it up. If it's getting cool enough, it will slow it down, save you energy, and make it quieter. Quieter, that's a word, right? Okay. So this is again a very tight fit, and the plug is right down in here. I'm not sure if you can see. Let me try to point this out with a pointer of some sort, but it's right in there, that white thing right there. So you only can put it one way, you see how this plug is keyed. So this is the proper way. Now this again is deep in here. It would have been easier to do this before I had the RAM, the first stick of RAM in here. So, oh, my chair is making all kinds of noise. Anyway, we'll try to feed this down here and get that on there. Alright. Okay, make sure it's seated securely all the way down. Now this particular case wasn't designed for a fan, so what I have to do is actually, I'm going to back this off a little bit now. What I'm going to do is actually screw the fan to the case. It just so happens that the screws perfectly line up with some of these holes. So I'm going to screw the fan into here and it'll sort of suck in air through this portion right here. It just sort of worked out that way even though it's not designed for it. And this will, you know, give this tiny little box some extra air because it's very tight. You have a lot of things generating heat, such as the fan and the CPU and the chipset. You know, got a huge heat sink and all these things build in heat. And then if you got it tightly packed and closed up, it can get hot in there. So I want to throw in an extra fan. This case wasn't really, or actually I'm hitting the upper limit as far as things in this case. This is a dual core processor. Usually you would put like an Atom dual core processor, but this is an Intel dual core 2. So it's putting a lot of heat out and it can get toasty in there really quick. So I'm going to go ahead and screw the fan onto this and I'll be right back. So I'm just finishing up screwing the fan on to the case cover. I don't really see a lot of It's because I didn't eat yet. I'm just back from work and I'm half brain dead. Oh, I gotta show you this shirt. Check it out. Can you all see that? Piece of bacon there. This is his old buddy. Alright, so I got the fan on there. One of the things I'm sacrificing is this fan is taking up some space where a PCI card could get normally added. The only slot here for a PCI card, and I'm going to bring you in so you can see this. But I have no intention of adding a PCI slot or PCI card to this, but it has one slot here. And this fan is going to, if I line this cover up with the case, you can see it's going to almost come right over that slot. And usually the cards come back a little further here. So this fan is going to be in the way. I'm not going to be able to add anything, but I had no intention of adding anything, so that's fine. There's some other case mods. I could have put the fan on this side, but the problem with that is right now I'm putting a large hard drive in there, and the only place it can really go is right there. If I went with a smaller laptop type hard drive, I could have sort of squeezed it in somewhere else. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting this assembled and we can test it out here. Now, this was an old hard drive I had laying around. It's a 200 gig hard drive, which is enough for what I'm using this for now, but in the future, I'm going to get this thing consuming as least amount of power as possible. I'll probably upgrade it sometime in the future with a solid state drive. Completely solid state, no moving parts. Extremely fast, produces no heat, and no failure rates really, you know, mechanical failure rates. The problem is that they're very expensive, and I can't afford one right now. So You got to put these little plastic rails on the drive that came with the case, so I can just sort of feed that in there, and I put 2 screws up here, and that will secure the drive to the case. And try to be careful not to drop any screws, especially into the computer, because you better find it before you turn it on. Now when I screw components in, I don't go fully tight. I just go enough to hold it until I get the second screw in. This way it can move around and help the drive align, or help whatever component is align, so you can get the second screw in. And then you could go ahead and tighten them both in. Just a rule of thumb, with putting in drives, CDs, things like that. Then we can go ahead and attach the cables. There's 2 cables, a power and a data cable. This is a serial ATA. I went ahead and taped them together. And I might have to untape them to get this all back in. Let's see if I can get them in. Ah, there it goes. Alright. So there we go. Again, this is the power, and this one is the data cable. Serial ATA, serial means data goes one bit after the other. Then you have something called a parallel interface. That's where you have data coming in together on multiple lines, traveling in parallel. Alright, the next thing to do is to put in the CD drive. I had purchased a HP DVD drive. There it is. HP 24 times. It's a DVD writer. A lot of these new optical writers also can do LightScribe, and that gives you the ability to use the laser that's inside. If you turn the CD upside down to put an image on it, so you could, like, instead of writing it with a Sharpie what the CD is, this thing could do it with the laser. So your cable management is so important with these small cases. You want to try to get the cables out of the way of the fans and the airflow, but it's really tough in these ITX cases. Should bring you in closer so you can see what I'm doing. All I'm really doing is attaching the cables, the data and the power cable, to the back of the I forgot what it is, the optical drive, the DVD drive. Now the other side of these cables, sort of run down underneath, so the excess is out of the way, and then it comes back to the motherboard where the connector is way back in here. What I did was I put a tie wrap here to hold these cables up, because there's a heat sink here. This metal here, it gets so hot, and the cables would have been resting right across that heat sink. So I had to get a tie wrap to hold them up so it wouldn't touch that scorching hot heat sink. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this back and put the screws in, and I'll be right back. Okay, now I'm going to get the case on. Carefully feed the cable that's going to the power button and the LEDs on the front panel back into the case, and line up the tabs. See, these cases are just crazy how tight they are. You can Can be difficult to get these on sometimes. Having some issues. Try not to force anything. You know, this is brittle plastic, and you can easily crack and break the tabs off that clip it onto the case. So, there we go. And then all we have left is to put this cover on and put the screws. Now, one other thing I want to point out is the fan. You know, you want to pay attention which way it's blowing. A lot of fans will actually have an arrow on it to show you the airflow, and some don't. For instance, this fan did not have an arrow on the stupid thing. So, as a rule of thumb, in most cases, if you don't have an airflow indicator, you see how the fan here has nothing and this side has a label and the braces? Well, where the label and the braces are is where the air is blowing out this way. If you're looking at this, the fan, this is where it's sucking in. That's blowing out. If you don't have like a little arrow on the side indicating which way the air is going. As a general rule, there could be an exception out there, so I don't want to hear it in the comments. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and close this up. We'll turn it on and see what we got. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the button. And before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and get the camera to the screen, because what I want to do is on the keyboard quickly hit F2 so I can enter the BIOS update. Now, every machine has a different way to get into the CMOS setup. CMOS stands for complementary metal oxide semiconductor, but CMOS setup doesn't, you don't need to concern yourself exactly with what that all is about. What you do need to know is that to get into the BIOS, you could change things as far as the basic in out or I/O of the motherboard. So hit the power button, hit the power button, and I'm going to hit F2 here, hitting F2, and you see in the BIOS. So what I want to look at is how much RAM. I should have 4 gigs of RAM now instead of 2, which I have 2 sticks in here. The other thing I want to make sure is that the fan is running. Now I can see the fan running in there, but I want to make sure it's running. So this motherboard allows me to go into the hardware monitoring, and I can see the fan speeds. So in this case, the front fan, and I can see it spinning. It's spinning so slow it's almost NA, but it will ramp up as the machine gets hotter. You can see it's already starting to ramp up just a little bit, but it's looking good. Okay, so the moment of truth. Hit the button, and we'll watch it boot up and see how fast it comes up. Should turn my speakers on. Make sure I have the speakers plugged in. You know, this is not a state-of-the-art i7 or i5 processor in this machine. It's a dual core. So on a scale of 1 to 5 as far as speed of processors out there, it's about a 2. You know, between a 2 and a 3 for speed. So not super fast. And we're booted up. So I went ahead and put the Intel wallpaper on there, and that's the processor that's in there. It's a Intel dual-core. So I got quite a mess going on whenever I work on these projects. I I don't do them very neatly. I got crap all over the place. So you're seeing me pretty messy. So there it is. Whoops, no, there it is. My project of the week. It's probably why I have not been commenting too much on my YouTube channel. I've been working on this project all week, doing a lot of research, picking out the motherboard for the processor and the RAM, and making sure everything's matched up and everything, because I don't want to send anything back. Some things, such as RAM or processors, you can't send back. So there it is, my first IT related video. I really hope you enjoyed it. So again, thank you very much for stopping by the Gear Obsession channel. And let me know in the comments what you think about computer stuff. Some other things I could put in some future videos. Here's a pretty cool device. It's you know how you have USB drives you could attach to your computer? Well, if you have spare hard drives laying around, as long as they're serial ATA, you could hook this up to your computer via USB and just sort of pop them in there and instant USB drive, and you can put 2 in on this one. It's pretty good if you want to image your hard drive to another hard drive. Let's say you have a larger one, you want to image it using imaging software, which could be a future episode, as a way of upgrading your hard drive to a larger one easily. This is a great device to do it with. So anyway, thank you very much, friends, subscribers, viewers, for again stopping by and supporting the Gear Obsession channel. I really appreciate it, and have a great evening.